sanctions, as well as the release of about $6 billion in frozen assets as a stop to Israel's attacks on Lebanon. Whereas the United States position is also fairly simple, but it complicates the matter because Washington says that nuclear enrichment and Iran's nuclear program are on the table as preconditions. These are lines for the United States, but it's also a red line for Tehran. And depending on how things progress, it also suggests that these preconditions by the United States are essentially leading to a failure of these talks before they even happen. In fact, Iran describes the demands by the United States as maximalist demands, and naturally, as a result, Iran is in a position where it does not want to continue with the United States unless Washington shows some sort of good faith before they can tackle the more pressing matters. And Iran's parliament's National Security Chairman says Tehran will not talk with the United States regarding its nuclear program.
Just met with foreign journalists in Tehran and thanked them for coming to capture a true picture of our country. In the meeting, I made it clear that FM Aragchi's trip to Pakistan is only for discussions on bilateral relations, and he has no assignment related to nuclear talks, which remain one of Iran's firm red lines.
Based off of that statement, the position that Abbas has already stated, we understand that Iran's nuclear program is a red line. This doesn't necessarily suggest that they're not in a position to compromise or find some sort of a way out, but it also suggests that unless the United States approaches the negotiating table with more reasonable demands, then the possibility of these talks are less likely to happen.
The moment, because we have seen a very heated exchange of statements and social media and direct media statements that they both are ready for next phase of war, and which will be very dangerous. There are already with the blockade of Strait of Hormuz by the United States, it means the Navy is on the ground, whether it's on the sea or it's on the ground. So this is very dangerous if if the ceasefire ends. It will be very catastrophic, but there is very high chances of that as well. That's what Pakistan and other mediators trying to uphold the ceasefire. Iran, doesn't want to give any message of any kind of weakness from them, from their side, and that's why. They are very clear that because Pakistan's efforts are, tireless efforts are everywhere have been seen, and Pakistan believes that by getting all their point of view of Iranians, they can better deliver to USA, and they'll be able to have some kind of deal breaker in the entire situation, because Iran is very much concerned and they have so much reservations. Of American plans of dialogue, and they always say that they have been betrayed by Americans during the dialogues. The war was started while Amman dialogues were nearly concluded. So that is where the highest concerns from the Iranians are, and Pakistan is trying to address their concerns.
Of our choosing. No one sails from the Strait of Hormuz to anywhere in the world without the permission of the United States Navy. The choice is theirs, but with this blockade, the clock is not on their side.
Days now here in conflict zone. Ever since the war started, we are stuck here. What I can see from my location now, there are several ships around me ever since the war started, but I've not noticed any big movement yet. As we hear that 40 ships have passed from Iran to outside Hormuz, that could be a little I mean, not, I don't know how genuine is that news, I cannot verify that, but yes, there are ships passing through, but not much ships, I guess. They are trying to blockade every movement of every ship to and from the Iranian ports. Yes, they've been doing that. That's what we heard. And there have been many attacks as well in past few days. We have noticed a few attacks were there.
I would love
Tout autour, nous n'avons plus aucune possibilité de croissance et d'extension. C'est l'un des aéroports les plus proches d'un centre-ville en Europe, à environ 8 km de Varsovie. Le bruit est pénible pour les riverains. Quant au nouvel aéroport qui va être construit et devrait ouvrir en 2032, soit dans 6 ans, il offrira d'énormes possibilités. Il y aura 2 pistes qui ne se croiseront pas et un terminal immense, bien plus grand que celui que nous avons actuellement, qui est presque à 100% de ses possibilités.
For her research, Larissa travels the length of the country in search of a truth that has haunted her since her teenage years.
Nothing is concrete.
Not going to be able to solve the problem. They keep putting, the Iranians keep putting more and more mines in there, and they just talk about pulling them out. Anything could go. One of my sayings is, when all else fails, they take you to war. And there could be a false flag attack that unites the people against Iran. And that's my greatest concern. Now they're saying that Iran and the United States are going to be having peace talks this weekend. And that brought the markets back up and brought some oil prices back down. So what's the truth? We don't know, because America says one thing, Iran says another thing. We don't see a peace deal. That's the bottom line. Israel is going to keep this war going. They started the war, they're going to keep the war going. The United States is losing support around the world. And NATO... war in American history. This is making a terrible situation worse. We may go into the greatest depression if this war does not stop.
Worsening so much, and so that the country is now enforcing a program of load shedding to ease the demand on the national grid. But that, coupled with high fuel prices and the shortage of liquefied petroleum gas, is putting the everyday lives of locals increasingly under strain.
Peace talks are good to stop the war, but who will address our everyday problems? The prices of gas and petrol remain high, and there's no relief in sight. Gas is for barely 2 hours in the morning, forcing us to buy one cylinder daily. We have children, and even getting them ready for school has become a struggle. I appeal to the government to ease the burden on ordinary people.
Power shutdowns mean my work stops at once. Load shedding in the morning, then afternoon, and later at night too. That interrupts my working. I can't afford a generator. Prices of batteries are very high, and everything you need is expensive.
When we start work, there would be power outages. We are in serious trouble due to lockdown and power load shedding. I don't know how to cover the losses. I appeal to the government to ease the lockdown and reduce the load shedding.
We received free medical treatment. Medicines were free. Everything was fine. We loved the Soviet Union, and we still do. I would even accept a union with Russia.
This nostalgia is fueled by parties aligned with Moscow, which mainly targets the older generations. Despite this rhetoric, Ignat's work is gradually changing attitude.
He had some conflict with, not necessarily Pete, with some other, he's a hard charger, and he had some conflicts with some other people, mostly as to building and buying their ships. I'm very aggressive in the new shipbuilding, and somehow he just didn't get along with them. He's an excellent guy.
Now, according to reports, John Phelan was opposed to buying and building new mega U.S. warships. And he argued that in our time, in modern warfare, smaller but highly mobile boats are the most effective. Now, not surprisingly, Donald Trump wants to build the biggest boats in history. So Phelan's out.
As Commander-in-Chief, it's my great honor to announce that I have approved a plan for the Navy to begin the construction of two brand new, very large, largest we've ever built, battleships. You know, you used to build the Iowa, the Missouri, the Wisconsin, the Alabama, many others. We had big battleships. These are bigger, but they will have 100 times they'll be 100 times the force, the power, and there's never been anything like these ships. These have been under design consideration for a long time.
Big ships cost lots of money. Mega warships cost mega bucks. And right now, Donald Trump is trying to increase the U.S. military budget by 50%. He wants to convince Congress that it's worth spending $1.5 trillion on the military. And when it comes to speedboats, they may be better for battle, but they're not going to convince Congress to cough up the cash. Now, at this point, Trump is talking about building a golden fleet, and the U.S. Navy is asking for $65.8 billion to pay for it.
Probably more importantly, he was out of alignment with the vision of Deputy Secretary of Defense Steve Feinberg, OMB Director Russ Vought, and Secretary Pete Hegseth. And this is at a time when the Navy is getting a generational level of funding for shipbuilding. You know, this year's budget's put in at $69 billion, nearly double what it was 3 years ago in shipbuilding. So, I mean, at a time when you needed alignment, he was out of the line. He was out of it with the senior leadership at the Pentagon and at the Office of Management and Budget.
Phelan wasn't alone in pointing out that these mega warships just aren't effective in modern warfare.
In a world in which adversaries such as China are advancing hypersonic weapons and drone swarms at breakneck speed, it is strategic folly to insist that every ship carries systems practical only on large surface combatants, especially when those ships become vastly overbuilt for their intended missions. The Navy needs a leaner, mission-focused, small surface combatant that multiplies force through clarity of purpose rather than gold-plated excess.
Now, the problem is way bigger than just Trump or Hegseth. The reality is that the U.S. economy largely depends on military spending. Hundreds of companies and hundreds of thousands of employees rely on American taxpayers paying for bigger and bigger weapons and more military hardware. The bigger the ship, the bigger the government contracts, even if the reality of the modern economy is that you can do a lot more for less with technology. Here's some said falling on.
A quarter of the shipyard workforce is retirement eligible within 5 years. Over the next decade, shipbuilders and suppliers will need to hire roughly 250,000 skilled workers to meet demand. That means apprenticeships
vocational training, accelerated pipelines, and partnerships with local communities. It also means paying fair wages, consistent build schedules, so shipyard workers can have lifetime careers. AI and automation do not replace the workforce.
Big lobbying associations have been created to demand the continued construction of gigantic naval vessels. We've got at this point labor unions, defense contracted corporations, retired military personnel, and pro-military political voices combining into actual organizations that demand to keep the contracts coming. Now, at this point, we can name a couple of them. We've got the Amphibious Warship Industrial Base Coalition, the American Maritime Industrial Coalition, and they were just on Capitol Hill in March, meeting with Congress, telling them that jobs and millions of dollars were on the line. There's a saying that all is fair in love and war, and when the battle gets going, missiles and drones are flying, it really doesn't matter. You do not get any points for how big your ship is or how much it costs to build it. But that's what
Les fonds européens représentent 10 à 15% de la croissance polonaise annuelle. Donc le gel de ces fonds, puis leur déblocage par Bruxelles en raison des changements du nouveau gouvernement, début 2024, était donc essentiel. C'était fondamental pour notre économie, pour notre croissance et aussi pour notre qualité de vie.
Le train en Europe, il est en train de perdre des voyageurs, tandis qu'en Pologne, ça augmente.
Tender una bandera que no sea nuestra, pero sabemos que es un pueblo. Es como si mi casa se invadiera al vecino.
Driven by unwavering commitment and the promise of a decent salary, but at the risk of never returning home.
Desde que yo vi el número más 380, yo me paso acá.
Yo me veía bien.
Without naming it, Hurricane Trump would be that geopolitical event, who demanded the EU buy more pricey American LNG if they wanted him to stop harassing them with tariffs on EU exports to the US. So not quite the energy paradise that they had imagined as a substitute for that Russian gas that they're then trying to handle down to zero. So now this same guy, well into the job, still doesn't have a plan B ready to offset Trump's global dumpster fire starter tour, most recently on display in the Middle East with the closing of the Strait of Hormuz. No clue what to do, he says, or how this is all going to turn out. So just, I guess, assume the brace position, folks, while this guy is at the controls amid all this economic turbulence. Yeah, great plan. I'm sure it'll all work out. Just ask the Jacques Delors Energy Center, which estimates that a 10 billion euro bill has already been wrapped up by 22 EU countries trying to offset their citizens' energy bills, mainly by cutting taxes so they have even less cash coming in themselves. Yeah, great to have no revenues coming in as a state when you're already broke. The French Prime Minister is already admitting that France is going to have to squeeze another 6 billion euros from the state budget, including Social Security, to offset their energy tax cuts. Small price to pay, though, to make sure that the French people are thriving.
It is a moment that spreads more and more.
Oh, there you have it. There's the... refused, and this was not planned.
Well, hey, look, worst case scenario, no borders in the Schengen zone, so maybe French pensioners can just scoot on down to Italy and explore the Mediterranean diet and way of life until this whole energy crisis blows over.
Will we move alone? I wouldn't rule it out. But since, speaking with colleagues, many of them, like me, find themselves working as medics in the field hospital, many of us share the same view of the situation. And so we have wounded arriving from all over whom we need to treat. We can't give them aspirin, let's put it that way.
Cry harder, guys. Look, if you can make Italy sound like any more of a war zone, maybe you'll be able to get in on some of that EU Ukraine aid cash. At least Finland is doing okay, right? Some of the cheapest power prices in the EU last year, largely energy self-sufficient, and getting a huge chunk of its oil right next door from the North Sea and neighboring Norway. Oops, nope. Somehow they've also managed to screw things up with reportedly the worst public finances in the EU, and having just agreed to about $600 million in austerity cuts. So what is the EU's plan to help all these countries then anyway? Well, they've got a cool name for it, Accelerate EU, as in accelerate EU and your nation's economy right off a cliff if this doesn't work out. Things like an even faster shift to green energy they're recommending because, yeah, that's worked out so well already as a backup plan. Let's just keep doing it or maybe try it differently. A fertilizer action plan they have in the works as well, because it also takes fuel to make the stuff that grows your food. Surprise, surprise. And also, they're promoting heat pumps as part of this plan. Sounds about as useful as their social credit style QR code plan that they said would stop the COVID virus during that crisis. But at least the EU's
It's far worse.
As everybody knows, especially Germany needs to buy its oil reserves to get over the winter. We need fertilizer, we need all the other sources of energy, and we have to buy them now. As far as I'm informed, they didn't start to buy the quantities yet, and they are pretty expensive. So either the smart ones are starting now to buy the quantities, but the suppliers cannot even tell if they can deliver, because the Gulf region, with 20% of the world's oil supply, even though it doesn't export too much to the European Union, but it's off the market. And we already have at the gas stations very high prices, far over €2 per liter. And this means that more and more people will
Steve and Jared will be heading to Pakistan tomorrow to hear the Iranians out.
US Vice President J.D. Vance, who led previous talks, will be on standby this time round, while Iran's parliamentary speaker, France's negotiating counterpart, will also be absent. The lower-level status of both delegations suggesting little hope for a breakthrough. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking on the 2-week extension to the ceasefire announced on Tuesday, and tensions remain high, particularly in the Strait of Hormuz.
President Trump has authorized the United States Navy to destroy any Iranian fast boats that attempt to put mines in the water or disrupt passage through the Strait of Hormuz, to shoot and kill. If Iran is putting mines in the water or otherwise threatening American commercial shipping or American forces, we will shoot to destroy. No hesitation, just like the drug boats in the Caribbean.
Since the truce began, Iran has seized 2 cargo ships and attacked 3 more in the vital shipping lane. Tehran says the waterway will remain closed until the US lifts its naval blockade, something Washington insists will only happen after a formal peace deal. The ongoing standoff is rattling global markets and straining relations with European allies, as the US accuses them of failing to take serious action to secure international shipping routes.
On Thursday of a ceasefire extension between Israel and Lebanon.
Israel invaded its neighbor last month, and Iran says a ceasefire there is a precondition for peace negotiations. There's a camera off.
City of Saida, the wait to return home feels endless, and a ceasefire with Israel hard to believe. We don't trust the Israeli enemy because they've declared and renewed the ceasefire. They're a bunch of liars.
But the death of Aus, he says, cuts deeper.
The pain of his father's death did not hurt me as much as the loss of the boy. He had lived with me for 7 years. They say nothing is dearer than a child, especially the child of your child, and this is how I feel. I am deeply hurt for him. My mental state is exhausted.
Aus's room, a shrine, not just to his late father, but also to many of those killed in Palestine. This is a village that's seen its fair share of settler violence. There are accusations of settlers continuously attempting to steal sheep. They've attacked locals, with some families for good. And now, this. The version of events of what unfolded earlier this week depends on who you speak to. The IDF says local Palestinians attacked a settler car. An IDF reservist in the vehicle got out and started shooting. One eyewitness told us that's a fabrication.
Always have weak justifications, claiming that we attacked them. They do not even call him a settler. They say he is a shepherd or a landowner, as if he has the right and we are the aggressors. They started shooting at people, and people began throwing stones at them to defend their children. The children did not go to them. They are the ones who came and stormed into the
voters in the West Bank and 70,000 in the city of Deir el-Balah in Gaza, where there's been no voting at all for 2 decades. Those candidates are aligned with President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah party. None are affiliated with Hamas, which controls nearly half of Gaza. Caitlin Brown has more.
In the West Bank and elections organized by the Palestinian Authority get underway.
Holding elections simultaneously in Deir el-Balah and the West Bank sends a message of unity of the territories and the political system.
In the Gaza enclave, the stakes are particularly high. No elections have been held here since Hamas won a landslide in 2006. Now, after 2 years of devastating war, most of Gaza's infrastructure lies in ruins. As a result, only the city of Deir el-Balah was deemed stable enough to hold a vote, with 70,000 eligible to head to the polls.
All young people, everyone over 18, 99% of them will go out to vote. Everyone wants to improve the country, especially after 2 years of war, the horrors and the destruction we have witnessed. May God help the people. What Gaza has endured is terrible.
However, the shadow of Hamas still looms. While the organization is not officially fielding candidates, several pro-Hamas figures
was considered to be a deadly year in the West Bank. The UN says a total of 240 Palestinians were killed by Israeli forces or
une très bonne chance de parvenir à un accord de paix dès cette année.
Plus d'1,5 million de personnes qui sont appelées à voter pour désigner leurs maires et leurs conseillers municipaux avec un choix très limité. La plupart des listes sont alignées avec le Fatah, le parti du président Mahmoud.
Jihadists for more than a decade. Since September, an Al-Qaeda affiliate has been attacking fuel tanker convoys, and residents of the capital faced a fuel shortage last month. More on that story.
Got a question there. Okay.
Why do voters do Democrats so poorly?
Oh. Did your dad give you that question? It's a great question in that I'm going to have words with you after this, Manu. Got a
Hakeem Jeffries. Have you guys heard of him? I don't know that he'd do very well in Chipley if he ran for office, but he's threatening Florida. Oh, you do the redistrict. We're going to come down. We're going to get you guys all this stuff. Go ahead. Make my day. Bring it on.
A missing congressman from New Jersey. In fact, you could call this Jersey unsure because nobody knows the whereabouts of Republican New Jersey Representative Tom Kean Jr. Tom Kean hasn't voted in the House of Representatives since early March. Now, I talked to several members of the House Republican leadership asking about his whereabouts. Nobody really knows. In fact, nobody knows his situation. Earlier this week, there was a rumor at that point that a congressman had died, and one member of the leadership said that they feared that it was Tom Kean. In fact, it was David Scott, the Democrat from Georgia, who passed away. Tom Kean represents a swing district. The Cook Political Report views it as a toss-up. He narrowly won re-election.
And then finally, on a personal matter, this will likely be my last gaggle for some time. As you can see, I'm about ready to have a baby any minute. So I will see you guys very soon. I know you'll be in very good hands with my team here at the White House. And I know all of you have the president's phone number personally. So I have no doubt that you'll have a shortage of statements and news from this building while I'm gone. So we'll see you guys this weekend. And then finally, on a personal matter, this will likely be my last gaggle for some time.